Orthodontic treatment can be carried out at any time during a patient's life. Now, with the invention of new orthodontic materials and orthodontic techniques, orthodontic treatment can be provided for any patient during any time of life. It could be specific, as in creating space for an implant, or like correcting a single tooth frostbite, or orthodontic treatment can be comprehensive. And if the treatment is the treatment plan is to provide comprehensive orthodontics, the aim should always be in achieving the best possible occlusion, facial aesthetics, and stability. However, this appropriate timing for orthodontic intervention is actually a matter of debate. As we all know, orthodontic treatments are time sensitive and time consuming as well. Simple correction of a crossbite can also sometimes take a minimum of about 2 months. And then the problem comes when if we intervene too early, or if we start a treatment too early, the treatment is going to take a very long time, which is going to be not very cost effective. And then if we wait a bit too long, sometimes certain treatment modalities might not work, and the treatment itself can become more difficult and complex. So there are, in fact, now, especially in the Western countries, certain schools and some certain theories where they believe that starting treatment during the primary dentition, where they believe in correcting anteroposterior and vertical jaw discrepancies during the primary dentition itself. And there is a very popular theory or a therapy called myofunctional therapy, where they believe in giving functional appliances to the children starting from about ages of 3. But the problem in this starting treatment for patients in the primary dentition is always because the child is having, due to the continued growth, the treatment is going to relapse. And the child will eventually need further treatment in the mixed dentition and the permanent dentition as well. So treatment time wise, it's going to take longer time, and it's going to be costly. Also, the child's behavior, especially compliance from children at this age, can be challenging. Then when we think about starting treatment for adults or during the adult phase, then again there are certain problems that we have to encounter. Most of the time for adults, they will end up needing interdisciplinary action always, and the treatment needs will always need a high level of technical skills and a good knowledge of biomechanics. And sometimes for adults, achieving ideal dental occlusion and facial appearance is not possible. And even though we expect adults to be more compliant and more tolerant when it comes to orthodontic treatment, it has been found that adults are less compliant and less tolerant compared to adolescents when it comes to achieving dealing with orthodontic pain. Also, there are certain problems due to the lack of growth. Correcting a deep overbite can be challenging in adults, and then certain treatment options are not going to be possible with when we are thinking about treating giving adults orthodontic treatment, like a growth modification treatment. Also, as we all know, in adults, there is a reduction in the vascularization and the collagen turnover within the periodontium. And then there is an overall reduction in the bone volume. So in adults, the initial tooth movement is slower. Therefore, even in adults, if we implement orthodontic treatment, it's going to take a longer time. For these reasons, even in the current scenario, the majority of orthodontic treatment should be carried out in the early permanent dentition. Why? Because there is sufficient growth remaining to potentially improve the jaw relationships. And then all permanent teeth are present in the mouth, so they can be placed in a final position. And they have found that the patients are most cooperative during this time of the age. And the treatment time wise also, the treatment course is reasonably short. And what we have encountered mostly when it comes to orthodontic treatment is when the treatment goes on for a longer time, patient also loses their interest over the time, and they become less compliant. So it's always better to aim at giving a very to achieve the orthodontic aims within a shorter time period. So due to these reasons, treatment during the adolescence remain the gold standard. So what is the purpose of this lecture? I'm trying to identify the common malocclusions that we encounter in our day-to-day practice, and then to give an insight or an understanding of when to decide of the best moment to start or implement orthodontic treatment on. So for that, what I'm trying to do will be, I was initially thinking of identifying certain the malocclusions like class 2 division 1, class 2 division 2, likewise. But then I decided that I will divide the dentition as deciduous dentition, the early mixed dentition, late mixed dentition, and then finally the adult period, and to identify the orthodontic treatments that we have to carry out during each dentition phase. So when we consider the deciduous dentition, predicting the malocclusion in the permanent based on the deciduous dentition is usually unreliable. And the general current understanding is that no specific orthodontic treatment is indicated except maintaining the deciduous teeth. Even though we do not consider early loss of a deciduous tooth as an orthodontic treatment per se, it can have an impact on the erupting or the permanent dentition, which could lead to orthodontic problems. So the early loss of a deciduous teeth will depend on the age in which the tooth is lost. So earlier the loss, patient will encounter more crowding. And then if the patient is already going to have a crowded mouth, then the patient will end up losing more space. So before going into the next slide, I would like to explain these two terms, that is balancing extractions and compensating extractions. So balancing extractions means when we perform an extraction on the opposite side of the same arch for the same tooth, and compensating extractions are when the opposing tooth is extracted. So here we are going to look at each of the deciduous teeth and what could happen or the effect it could have with the early loss, and then to consider whether we need to go in for a balancing extraction or a compensating extraction. So when it comes to the incisors will basically have no effect on the permanent dentition with the early loss. So balancing extractions and compensating extractions are not necessary. When we consider the canines, an early loss of a canine can cause early loss of one side of a canine can lead to a centerline shift in the permanent dentation. So we have to consider balancing by extracting the opposing quadrant C. Compensating extractions when it comes to canines are again not necessary. Whereas when we consider the first molar, again, early loss of a single first molar could lead to a centerline shift. Therefore, we have to consider about balancing extractions. And then if the lower molars, the lower primary first molar is extracted, we have to consider extracting the upper as well to preserve the buccal segments. With regards to the loss of the second molar, that is the E, the effect will be on crowding, that is in the premolar region. So balancing extraction is basically not necessary. but we will have to consider compensating if both molars are lost in one arch. So this is something we usually say in a normal dentition. There is ample space for premolars to erupt into a perfect alignment. So if the premolar crowding you see in these two pictures or the two photographs is because of the early extraction of deciduous molars. And then in the next photograph, where we can see the lower incisors, we can see the C has been extracted on the lower left side, and the center line has shifted already. So if a single tooth is lost, we have to consider space maintenance in the form of removable or fixed appliances. So if it's in the labial segment, we can give a simple removable prosthesis. And in the posterior region, we can consider giving fixed space maintenance. So if one knee is missing, if we have to extract a second primary molar, that is the E, then we can give what we call a band and loop, which is shown in the far left of this photograph. If both molars are lost, we can give in the lower arch what we call a lingual arch, or in the upper arch we can give a palatal arch. Space maintenance is not necessary if the permanent successor is going to erupt within about 6 months. That is, if you take an X-ray and see that the permanent root is formed, more than half to 2/3 of the permanent root is formed, you don't have to consider maintaining the space. And then we often see worried parents bringing their kids, complaining that the child is sucking their thumb and that they are not able to stop the habit. So what we say now, or the current understanding, is that the sucking habits will have little or no effect during the primary dentition phase. And the effect from the habit will depend on the frequency. If the child is sucking for more than 6 hours per day, and then the duration, that is, if the habit is going to persist even when the permanent incisors erupt. So moving on to early mixed dentition, we often see worried parents bringing their kids as soon as the lower incisors starts to erupt, because the lower incisors doesn't come into a straight or perfect line. And then sometimes parents are so persuasive and they want us to do something. But the advice that I can give is, if the lower incisor crowding is up to 2 millimeters, this is something that is going to resolve spontaneously, because with the increase of the arch length, with the pressure of the tongue, the lower incisors are going to come into alignment spontaneously. And more than the lower incisors, sometimes we see parents bringing their children when the central incisors and the lateral incisors starts to erupt, and this phase is usually called the ugly duckling phase, or the ugly duckling stage, where we see a physiological diastema and the distal flaring of the lateral incisors. So as we know, this is due to the canine, the erupting canine, because the tip of the canine lies on the lateral incisor root. So the lateral incisors are distally flared because the canine tip is lying on the lateral incisor root. So sometimes we are tempted, when the parent is so persuasive, to do something and thinking that we try to close this diastema by a fixed appliance or a removable appliance. But I have to emphasize that by trying to correct this, we will be creating more problems to the patient, because the moment we place a removable appliance or a fixed appliance on these incisors, the lateral incisor roots are going to upright, which will end up impacting the canines, which is going to create a greater problem for the patient. But there are certain things that we need to intervene as soon as we see in the early mixed dentition. That is, we have to correct anterior and posterior crossbites. So we are going to look into each separately. So anterior crossbites could be due to a class 3 skeletal pattern because of crowding, or when there is a retained primary tooth, a presence of a supernumerary, trauma, or also anterior crossbites are common in cleft lip and palate patients. So when we consider the management, we have to always identify the etiological factor before implementing on treatment. So if the anterior crossbite is due to a skeletal problem, due to maxillary hypoplasia, we have to consider growth modification treatment. And if the crossbite is due because the child is having a cleft lip and a palate, they will always need interdisciplinary treatment. So it's better that such treatment patients are managed in a center where the joint orthodontic and OMF and restorative treatment can be provided. But anterior crossbites of dental origin is something that all of us can correct. And then the indications for treatment would be if the impending or the involved lower incisor is showing gingival recession, and if there is a forward displacement of the mandible because of the premature contact of the involved tooth, or if the involved lower incisor is mobile, or if you can see occlusal wear facets, this has to be corrected immediately. Likewise, posterior crossbites should also be corrected early as possible to eliminate displacement. The posterior crossbites could be because of a skeletal discrepancy or of a persistent digit sucking habit. So when we consider posterior crossbites, early treatment in the mixed dentition could be in the form of a simple upper removable appliance with a midline expansion screw, which will eliminate displacement on closure and will establish a normal transverse relationship. If the child is not compliant enough, then we can consider fixed appliances like what is shown here, the Cod Helix appliance. And another problem that we should not miss during the early mixed dentition phase is the unerupted central incisor. So if you see a discrepancy or asymmetrical eruption pattern where the central incisor has erupted and the contralateral has not erupted within about 6 months, or if the lateral incisor erupts before the central incisor, then it's always advised to investigate with a simple IOPA or upper standard occlusal. So most likely the causes could be a supernumerary, which in the form of a tuberculate supernumerary, or a retained A, or because of the dilaceration of the involved central incisor. Here you can see on the left side radiograph, the central incisor is not erupted because of the retained primary tooth. So in this situation, simple extraction of the retained A would allow the central incisor to erupt into the mouth. But in the second radiograph, the incisor is dilacerated. So again, the treatment will depend on the etiological factor. So if there is a supernumerary involved, if the supernumerary has already erupted into the mouth, you can consider extraction. But if the supernumerary has not erupted into the mouth, then we have to consider surgical removal. And then if you are going to surgically remove the involved supernumerary, it's always better to bond a bracket and a chain at the same time on the unerupted incisor. But you don't have to apply orthodontic traction or start orthodontic treatment immediately, because during the early mixed dentition, they are young children and they have the eruption potential is there on the tooth. So simply by removing the obstruction, the tooth itself will erupt on its own. So you can wait for about a period of 1 year, allowing the tooth to erupt, and then orthodontic traction should be considered only if it does not erupt after about 1 year. If the tooth is dilacerated, then it's better that if we can get a CBCT to identify the level of dilaceration. If it's a mild dilaceration, it can the tooth can erupt. If it's severe, we will have to consider surgical removal and giving a prosthesis. This is not something that we see very commonly, but this is a problem that we do see on and off, that is impaction of the first molars against the primary second molar. So in this case, if this is detected and if the impaction is minor, by simply placing a simple orthodontic separator, this will disimpact the first molar and allow it to erupt. But if the impaction is severe, then we will have to consider extracting the E and then later manage the space issues. And another common problem we see on a day-to-day practice is the child coming with a carious first molar. 1 or 2 molars may be carious, and then if we extract these carious molars without taking any consideration, again we might end up creating more problems to the patient rather than taking the patient's pain away. Because if the lower molar is extracted, then the adjoining 2 teeth, that is the 7 and the 5, will tilt into this space, which will cause pocketing, and the upper 6 is always going to over-erupt, which will lead to food impactions, and then this is going to create a problem. So these are the general rules that we should follow when we consider extracting carious first molar. That is, if the lower molar needs extraction, the upper molar on that side should be extracted to prevent the over-eruption. If the upper molar needs to be extracted, the opposing lower molar does not necessarily need to be extracted unless if it's of poor prognosis, because with the lower molars, they don't over-erupt as much as the upper molars. And you have to treat the right and the left sides on their own merit. So what is the time that we should extract the lower first molar? Should be, it's always advised to take a simple, even if you don't have an OPG, a simple IOPA radiograph, and the timing is such that we have to wait until you see the interradicular crescent of the 7s just forming, because when we extract the 6 at this time, the 7 will erupt into the 6 space, and the problems that I have mentioned in the previous slide will not be caused. However, if the patient is having a class 2 division 1 malocclusion or a class 3 malocclusion, then it's always advised that, because we believe in orthodontics, if we do need space and then if we are considering extractions, we always extract the tooth with the poor prognosis. So if we have a carious first molar in the mouth, rather than extracting the premolars, we will be opting for the carious molars to be extracted. So in class 2 division 1s, if the understanding is that upper first molar should be preserved until the upper second molars erupt, so that the 6 can be extracted to retrocline the upper incisors. And in a class 3 situation, the lower first molar should be preserved until the lower second molar erupts, so that the lower 6 can be extracted to retrocline the lower incisors rather than taking out the premolars out. Then this is another common problem that we see in the early mixed dentation, that is the transposition of the lower lateral incisors, which could lead to the loss of the C and the D, and sometimes this could lead to the impaction of the 3. So if this is seen early, we have to consider repositioning the lateral incisor before the canine erupts, because if the canine starts to erupt, then we have to consider extracting this the transverse lateral incisor, because otherwise it will impact the lower canine. Then another common problem we see in the early max dentition is the supernumeraries. These usually disrupt the normal eruption of other teeth, and then they can cause crowding or spacing. So treatment should be always aimed at extracting before the problems arise. So we have sometimes we see what we call supplemental supernumeraries. Those are teeth that resemble the normal line of or normal morphology of the tooth. So when we consider extracting the supplemental supernumeraries, we should always retain the tooth which resembles the best size, color, the tooth that resembles the natural tooth in color, morphology, and also in the position. So this shows where two supernumeraries has not been extracted at the right time. So in the first picture, we see what we call a mesiodens. If this mesiodens was extracted when it was seen earlier, the patient would have not encountered any crowding in his mouth. And in the second picture, we see what we call a tuberculate supernumerary. And if this was extracted, the right central incisor would have erupted into place. And then back to the midline diastema that we see. So I mentioned that if it's the physiological diastema, we should not intervene. But however, midline diastemas could be due to supernumeraries because of a fibrous frenum. It could be because when the patient is missing their lateral incisors, or when they have small lateral incisors, or the patient could be having generalized spacing, or because of retained primary teeth. So interception or early treatment is advised if the diastema is more than 2 millimeters. You should always investigate by taking a simple IOPA radiograph or occlusal radiograph. And in the IOPA radiograph, you would see if whether there are any unerupted supernumeraries, or sometimes if the cause for the midline diastema is the fibrous frenum, we will see a radiolucent wedge or in the interdental alveolar ridge. Again, the management should be directed by first identifying the cause, and then interceptive treatment should be started if the diastema is greater than 2 millimeters. But if the reason is the reason for the midline diastema is generalized spacing or peg laterals or missing laterals, then it's advised to wait, because treating these conditions will need comprehensive and interdisciplinary management. So sometimes during the early mixed dentition, patients with severe class 2 division 1 malocclusions, the worried parents bring the child asking for treatment. Sometimes sometimes we tend to wait, thinking that it's better to start treatment during the late mixed dentition or early permanent dentition. But there is one indication, there is one situation in which we can think about intervening early. That is, if the patient is psychologically affected, and more importantly, if the patient is having incompetent lips, then the child is having an increased risk of trauma to the upper incisors. Also, if the overbite is deep and if it's traumatic, and the lower incisors will go and hit on the upper palate, causing gingival trauma, then interceptive treatment is advised if there is adequate space present in the patient's mouth. So you can give a simple removable appliance with a U-loop labial bow and a flat anterior bite plane to control or retrocline the incisors slightly so that the patient can achieve lip competency and that the overbite can be controlled to prevent the trauma. And sometimes we often wonder whether we should extract a over-retained primary tooth or whether we should just leave it as it is. Usually, a permanent tooth will erupt when about 3/4 of the root of the permanent successor is formed. And if a primary tooth is retained beyond this point, it is considered as an over-retained tooth. So what are the problems that a child will encounter with the over-retained teeth will be? There will be, in the involved area, there will be gingival inflammation and hyperplasia, which will lead to pain and bleeding. And it could deflect the permanent tooth, which could lead to crowding and a crossbite. So when should we extract a over-retained primary tooth? If the permanent tooth crown is visible and if the tooth is not mobile, then extraction is indicated. If the tooth is mobile, you can always advise the child to wiggle it out from the mouth. So moving on to late mixed dentation, there are few conditions in which we need to intervene to prevent orthodontic complications. That is, the maxillary canine. So the maxillary canine is often impacted because it has the longest path of eruption. And usually, the maxillary canine should be palpable on the buccal aspect of the alveolus around the age of 9 to 10. If this is not palpable, it is always advised to take a OPG or even a simple upper occlusal radiograph and check the resorption of the roots of the deciduous canines. So, if the canine is not palpable in the buccal position, then you have to consider extraction of the primary canine as an interceptive measure. So, this photograph shows where this shows the findings of a very famous study which we all orthodontists use, that is which was done by Erickson and Curol, where they found that if by timely interception, that is by extracting the C at if we detect when the canine is not palpable, if the canine tip has not passed the midline of the lateral incisor, that there is a 91% chance of the canine correcting its path or erupting without getting impacted into the mouth. And the other thing that we have to consider during late mixed dentation is submerging or infraoccluded teeth. Infraocclusion means teeth which have failed to achieve or maintain their occlusal relationship to adjacent and opposing teeth. So the infraoccluded tooth will remain static while the adjacent teeth move vertically with growth and the development of the alveolar process. So what are the possible effects of ankylosed teeth on the developing dentation? It will definitely have a effect on the developing alveolar ridge, and then delayed exfoliation. It will lead to the delayed exfoliation of the primary tooth that is involved. It can lead to impaction and or delayed eruption of the permanent successor. It could lead to an ectopic eruption of the permanent successor, and then because the tooth is submerging, the adjacent teeth will tip into this space, and then over-eruption of the opposing tooth can also occur. And then there will be a space loss and development of periodontal problems. So how do we manage an ankylosed primary molar? If the permanent successor is present, then we don't have to worry much about this because they will usually resolve normally and the effects on the occlusal development are usually temporary. So typically, which is about 6 months later than the average. So extraction is not normally indicated. All we have to do is carefully observe and take periodic radiographs. But there will be an instance where we will have to consider extracting the primary tooth when the permanent successor is there, if there is an interference which occurs with the, if it's interfering with the eruption of the permanent, or if the adjacent teeth starts to drift. After extracting the ankylosed primary molar, we will have to consider giving a space maintainer to prevent the migration of the adjoining teeth. And then we might have to consider uprighting if the teeth have already tipped. So then the other thing that we have to implement during late mixed dentition is if we are considering growth modification treatment, especially for class 2 division 1 patients, we all know that the girls, they attain their puberty before the boys, which is around 9 to 13 years of age. So 9 to 13 years of age means that the child is in the late mixed dentition. So these are the indications if we are thinking about functional appliances. The child should actively grow, be a growing teenager, and the upper incisors should be proclined with minimal crowding, and the lower incisors has to be upright or retroclined. The molar relation should be class 2, and the skeletal relationship should be class 2 or class 1, and then the child should have a low or an average FMPA angle. However, functional appliances should not be considered in patients who have completed their growth, in patients who have anterior open bites with skeletal origins, those who have nasal obstruction, or if they have their lower incisors proclined, or if the child is suspected to be a poor cooperator. So we were talking about interceptive orthodontic measures, and that is treating problems during the early mixed and late mixed dentition. So they have found that 15% of these problems can be fully corrected and 49% can be improved with targeted interceptive measures, which is cost effective. But however, I have to reiterate, blanket prescription of early treatment is not indicated. So then we are going to jump into, I'm going to just talk about the growth in all three planes of space. That is, in a skeletal malocclusion, growth occurs on a different timetable for the three planes of space. And then maxillary growth in the transverse plane ceases first. So that is why palatal expansion, or like I mentioned about correcting the posterior crossbites, has to be done in the early years. Whereas for anteroposterior growth, what we have to keep in mind is the anteroposterior growth occurs until about late adolescence. So treatment changes and the growth occurs till late adolescence. So we have to keep that in mind when we are treating anteroposterior skeletal deficiencies. And the vertical growth is the last to stop. So we have to keep in mind that we have to go on for a later approach. So in such situations, we have to delay the treatment. So there are three specific situations in which I wish to speak. That is about in the anteroposterior plane, the mandibular prognathism, because the mandible is going to grow until the patient is about 18 to 21 years. And if we implement on early orthodontic treatment or surgery, the patient will end up requiring retreatment. So this is a good example. If you see in the when this is a photograph of the same child, the first one is when he was about 13 or 14. So if you see the profile wise, he doesn't have a very big mandible. So we would be tempted, when if the patient comes for treatment, we are tempted to start orthodontic camouflaging or orthodontic treatment for such a patient. But if you see the other two photographs, this one is when he is 18 and the other one is when he is 21, the mandible continues to grow. So then he ended up needing a mandibular surgery. Even if we are, even though we are tempted, and if you see a class 3, and if you see the mandible, and the problem is in the mandible, it's always advised, and it's always better to stay. And the other problem is with the long face patterns, because these are also remarkably difficult to modify. And then when we try to close the anterior open bite by elongating the anterior teeth, we might be making the facial appearance worse. So for severe skeletal open bites also, surgery is the best treatment. And because, like I told about earlier when it came to growth, vertical growth is the last to cease, which goes up to until around the 3rd decade. So it's always better to wait before starting to treat a skeletal open bite. And the other thing that this is something that we do, general practitioners do on a daily basis, that is when we consider implants for an ankylosed or a missing tooth. So implant is also more or less like an ankylosed tooth. So if we place an implant soon, with the continued vertical growth, the implant will appear to intrude, and the other teeth will erupt, and we will see a discrepancy of the gingival margins and the incisor ledgers. And even though this is not connected to the other situations that I mentioned earlier, patient who request orthodontic treatment, and an adult patient especially who has periodontal problems, there is no contraindication in providing orthodontic treatment for such patients. But what we have to have in mind is that the disease has to first be controlled, and then there has to be a period of observation following preliminary treatment to allow healing. And then during orthodontic treatment also, a maintenance schedule of 2 to 4 months has to be given, where the patient's periodontal hygiene or the disease level is checked. So in summary, during the deciduous dentition, the treatment that we have to consider is more or less space maintenance. And in the early mixed dentition, we have to treat anterior crossbites, both of dental and skeletal origins. Posterior crossbites, we have to intervene on habits to seize the habit, and then we have to manage the unerupted incisors, carious first molars, supernumeraries, and large diastemas. But remember, do not treat transient malocclusions, that is the lower incisor crowding and the ugly duckling stage. In the late mixed dentition phase, we have to manage the canines if they are going to get impacted canines. Then class 2 division 1's growth modification treatment, class 2 division 2's, and then we have to manage the ankylosed primary molars. And finally, remember to wait if the child is having a class 3 mandibular prognathism, a skeletal open bite, and in your implant placement and periodontal problems. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Niroshana. Congratulations on a very informative and wonderful lecture. And I think you have set the bar very high, for the other lectures to follow. I really like to thank on behalf of the entire Council of the Sri Lanka Dental Association coming forward and taking up the challenge and to doing the honors by doing the inaugural lecture. Thank you very much. And before we move on to the other proceedings, I would like to add, initially at the outset, I mentioned that if there are any questions that you can forward it to chat or rather privately. I am yet to have any questions. So I would like to give you about maximum around 30 seconds to 1 minute before we wrap up the webinar for this week. So if you have any questions, you can send it through the private chat, and then we'll be forwarding it to Dr. Niroshana. In the event, since we are not receiving any questions, which seems that almost everybody has understood this timely lecture. And unfortunately, since we are not there at the Sri Lanka Dental Association, I mean, in person, we are unable to give Dr. Niroshana the letter of, or rather the certificate of appreciation, which she richly deserves. So I'll be in future, I'll be taking my time to forward it to her in person. I'd like to remind before we wrap up this webinar that our next lecture will be on 25th of October. That is the last Sunday this month at 8 p.m. And the lecturer is Mr. Dr. Amol Thorat from Pune, India. And the lecture topic will be actually, he is a prosthodontist. So the lecture topic will be full mouth rehabilitation. So I think it will be a very informative lecture as well. And I hope to see everybody who has participated in this lecture, logging in early and getting the information that you need. So on behalf of Sri Lanka Dental Association, I'd like to thank everybody for joining in. And along with the rest of my team, I'd like to wish good night. Thank you.